Welcome back to the shop, everyone. Today is an exciting day. I have something super exciting, something new that you've never seen on my channel before, and I'm very, very excited to share it with you. All right, so without any further delays, this is a UMS 5100. I teased this a while back, and I am using this for assembling a project for another club member. Okay, this is not mine, and I am keeping it super clean. I have not dusted it off or anything. Every time I work on this model, I make sure that this is covered and put away properly. Okay, so bear with me for keeping it covered on the previous video. I'm sorry, get over yourselves. All right, so that being said, I have something taken off here. We have a plate, and we have all of this thread that we have to occupy, and that is over here. Now this is a Ramoser Varioprop assembly. Super nice stuff. So we have a 2-blade assembly, we have a top and a bottom, a middle piece, and a screw. There's other things associated with this that we'll get into as we go, but first things first, these blades are composite and they are very rigid. These are every bit of any sort of professional piece of scale equipment that you could possibly buy. Very high quality stuff, and you definitely get what you pay for. I will note that this piece that's on the inside here, I'll show you how it works in a bit, but it does come pre-lubricated with a lithium grease. It's kind of sticky. It gets all over your fingers, so be mindful of that. It comes in different pieces in packages, and it came like this. This is a spacer. We were missing the spacer in the package, and so we're working with Ramoser Varioprop to get that resolved currently. But this is a 3D printed spacer that I have for the time being. Not entirely accurate just yet. It has a little bit of slop on the inside, so I have a new piece coming for test fitting all of the prop and everything else, which is super exciting. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on the tripod so that I can show you how this thing assembles. It's a little bit tricky. You kind of, at least I did, I second guessed myself in assembling this. Like I think of myself as a fairly intelligent person, right? And I'm fairly experienced in the hobby, and I thought, I can follow the instructions and I can get through this. But needless to say, I want to go through things step by step and show you how this thing assembles and how it works, because it is truly amazing. So with everything set up here, I'm going to go over just a couple of items. First and foremost, this is sort of the bag of all the stuff that came with it, and I'll go over how everything goes. But the driver that comes with it is a 2.5 millimeter driver. I'm using an Allen key and a hex head on my driver here just because it's more comfortable. This doesn't really fit in my big bare paws very well as opposed to something like this. So choose your tools, but it is really nice that this comes with it. It's not, you know, something super cheap, but it's also not the greatest tool for the job. So we'll put that aside. Now, that being said, nothing really needs to be changed. There's no flashing on the prop that needs to be removed. There are no burrs that need to be, you know, swiped off of any of this aluminum. So that being said, we're just going to get right into it. The instructions sort of tell you to seat this in. And what I found most helpful was to actually remove that part and then seat this in, and then you're supposed to move this. You're almost clearancing this mold part. See the seam in the composite? So as you rotate, you're clearancing that. This was quite stiff when I first got it. So with that clearancing, because you're gonna change the angle of the prop, right? That's the whole intent of this apparatus. So you want to make sure that that can rotate fairly freely. And the same goes for both sides, obviously, right? You put it in and you sort of clearance it to get it that way. Now, after that, what I did was I then assembled this. And it just clamshells together. And we're not talking tight. We're talking just fairly loosely put together here. Because I figured, well, there's a top and a bottom. I want to make sure that we're clearanced for both. And that's what I did. I just clamshelled this together and then rotate back and forth a few times just to make sure it's nice and free and seated well and that there's nothing going to obstruct any of these from moving. All right. So now comes the point where I kind of started to second guess myself, where you integrate the central mechanism with the blades as you install. And so I had this fully unassembled and I had this piece in here and I wasn't sure whether there's two dots on the inside, right? And I wasn't sure which one it went on. Turns out it goes on the lower one. And that's okay. There's a little pitting here. I'm assuming that's because it's balanced. That makes sense. So then when I started to put this in, I couldn't quite get this little tip in between those two veins right there. So what I knew that's where it went because there's only one place it could go, right? And as this moves up and down, right, with this screw, that is what's going to rotate this, right? So what I did was I just gently pushed that above and slid it in the top. And it's still pretty tight, right? So once I got it seated in there, I left it there, and then I got the other one seated. All right, so now I have both of those seated, but we're not fully into the hub yet. So then everything just slides down and you want it to seat in these grooves. Sorry, seat in these grooves right here, right? And then they're not really gonna move anywhere. Then put the top of the clamshell on and we're gonna tighten with the bolts. All right, so we're not going to use the Allen key yet. We're just loosely finger tight here. Everything is snugly fit. There's nothing loose or, jingling around here. It's fairly assembled. It's just not torqued, right? So how do you set the right angle? And that's a great question. See, there are protrusions here on both sides of the blades, right? And that's because there's a gauge that clips on using those protrusions, just like that, right? And then there is a pin that fits into a machined port, right? So now, as the blade rotates, the rotation will align with the pin, which is set, right? So how do the blades rotate? Well, remember that bolt that I showed you on the inside? That's right there. And again, it's a 2.5 millimeter. So you only need the one driver, okay? So see how that's moving? It's rotating the blade. And then we'll rotate it back. So this way you can really, really dial in your blade rotation. Now, it's difficult for me to show on the camera at this angle. So I am going to, okay, this is loosened all the way, right? Now we're going to tighten it all the way. And you can watch it just move right happily along. And now it's tight. It's snug. I don't want to do it anymore because I don't want to damage anything. But that is all that happens. and you can see that blade rotate. Now, what's also worth noting is that as the blade rotates, because of the shape of these blades, these do protrude past where this is. So if you have a pretty steep pitch that you want to set on these props, you need to make sure that there's clearance behind the base of your prop hub where your cowl is going to be. Otherwise, you're going to run into contact here. Just something to be aware of. So that is, again, why I'm doing this now with the engine separate, because before I set the engine depth, that's what I'm doing. I'm building a motor box. I want to make sure that I have the depth set correct. So having set at 10 degrees or 10 inches, I guess, 10 inches, everything is fine, ready to go as the minimum pitch for this. So then what I do is I get these, how they feel about snug, the same amount of snugness, just finger snug. And I don't know if this is the right way to do this, but this is just what I figured, because you want these to be pretty even, right? And then I'm doing roughly 1/4 of a turn in alternating patterns, right? It's just like lug nuts on your car. All right, and do this a couple of times until you're seated. As they say, that ain't going nowhere. Now, as we bring the engine into the equation here, there's a couple of things that I want to note. This engine comes with a washer, obviously, a prop washer, as well as a prop nut to seat everything on. But then as a safety, there is an E-clip, right? So the E-clip goes on the end of the shaft, prevents the nut from backing out, and just all around safe things, okay? So then you have this prop hub that goes on here, but it don't fit. Ramoser also offers the spacers, and that is what was missing from our package, and what this 3D print is for. It just goes onto the shaft and goes here. And again, just a little bit of slop that I want to take care of just to make sure that this is properly centered and seated as if the metal piece were there. And then this, and then this. Right? Cool. There's one more piece I want to show you. Ta-da! Yeah, so you can clearly see the camera and how shiny this is. So it is pretty well shined, but I'm going to polish this up as well as the hub, just because this is such an amazing piece of jewelry for the front of this airplane. The spinner is an accessory that you can buy for these, and it fits exceptionally well. As you can see, I took the prop washer off because I need to turn this down so that it fits properly underneath of it. Yeah, I mean, I could probably fit it over top, but it looks a little funny. Just me. It's one of those refinement kinds of things as you go through these. But that being said, you make sure that you look into what sort of thread or screw that you need for the prop nut, because not everybody's going to have the right thread pitch. These are metric. Everything is metric that's coming out of Germany. That makes sense. And I work in metric personally. All right, so at this point, let's say you're at the flying field and you need to make a change based off of RPM or performance of the airplane that you're not satisfied with. Engine cooling is low enough that you feel like you can change the pitch of the prop to get a little bit more performance based off of your RPM, things like that. So here's the cool part. This is so easy to adjust at the field. Simply, remove your spinner with the one screw, the E-clip, obviously, and then your prop nut, as well as your prop washer, and then you're exposed to the prop, right? So then it's as easy as putting your gauge on, putting your needle in, and then loosening all four of these just a little bit till they're, not finger tight, but, just beyond finger loose, I guess. And then you can adjust your screw to get another inch or even half an inch. There's enough graduation within here that you can really dial this in quite a ways. All right, so that is the Ramoser Varioprop on a UMS 100cc gas engine, and I'm excited to get this project finished for my club friend. It's going to be an amazing model. It's going to sound awesome, and I can't wait to take you on the journey with me as I break in the engine and get everything programmed ready for Michael. This engine does require an auxiliary pump because there's not enough suction on the carb alone to get enough fuel to the engine. It's one thing I didn't know about these engines going into this project. So it's been a really great learning opportunity. I'm so glad that I could bring you along with me as I work on this. And until next time, keep working on your amazing flying works of art.